My name's Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And while this is not therapy, this is just kind of an opportunity to share my information with you, what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've experienced and what I know to be the best course of action for managing betrayal trauma. Just a little background is I have kind of worked on both sides. I've worked with men who've struggled with drug and sex addiction. I've also worked with partners who have kind of dealt with the trauma of uncovering an addiction, substance abuse or sex addiction. I've also dealt with single infidelities versus like say a chronic pattern of infidelity, chronic porn use. I've run each side. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the gamut of emotions that all parties involved experience and struggle with. So really quickly, I'm just going to share a few minutes of, I guess, a synopsis of betrayal trauma, how I understand it, and the approaches to managing it and healing from it. But basically, betrayal trauma is the traumatic experience of being betrayed. And of course, in order to feel betrayed, there has to be kind of an understanding that this is a safe person, this is a safe environment. And so, of course, your significant other is going to be thought of as a person who will speak the truth, will put your marriage or your partnership as a priority, values the family and the life that you have. And then suddenly finding out that he or she's been cheating or abusing substances or doing nefarious secret activities behind your back, those are all very traumatizing to uncover. And they can be the most destructive moments in one's life. Extremely traumatizing. And in fact, more research is showing that those who experience that type of betrayal trauma actually often demonstrate PTSD symptoms, post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. So in general, you suffer physiological consequences, emotional consequences, mental consequences. And let me just list a few. First, it'll make you feel unsafe because a person that you trusted, that you let in, lied and snuck around behind your back. It violates that trust. Also, it can give you the feeling like you are crazy, because we all have these instincts to say, that's really odd. He's getting a lot of block call phone numbers. She's doing a lot of late night meetings. Where did this money in the bank account go? And we know that things are just not adding up. She's acting strange. She's a lot more short-tempered. He is so critical right now, and I don't understand why. And they, in an effort to cover up their secret life, their double life, the perpetrators of the betrayal will lie to you, will gaslight and tell you what your reality is, which is that they are sneaking around and running a double life. That's the reality. They'll tell you, you're crazy. You need to not be so jealous. You need to, maybe if you'd have sex with me more, we wouldn't be having this problem. You've never been the same after the kids, things like that. That the reality is that they have been leading a double life, lying, sneaking around, but they gaslight you into believing that all of those things are not true. And that is absolutely crazy making. In our career field of sex addiction, we say it's more often that betrayed partners leave because of the lies that were being told, not because the actions that happened. And that continues on later during the healing process or the reconciliation process, if there is one. The other thing is that there can be this secondary wave of shame. So you find out that your partner has been lying, and it's extremely traumatizing because your world gets turned upside down. And then the next thing that happens is there's the blame on yourself of maybe if I did have sex with him or her more often, maybe if I earned more money, if I was more attractive, if I did more loving things, if I wasn't so selfish, that secondary shame of it's my fault. I could have managed his or her betrayal. I could have stopped it from happening. And also the concept of betrayal blindness, of why didn't I see that? I'm so stupid. It seems like everybody else knew that he or she was cheating and I didn't. So there's that going on. And then of course there's the religious expectations of these concepts of, if you divorce, it's, you know, a version, some form of failure. The community expectations that you're embarrassed to tell your friends and loved ones that your partner has a sex addiction or a secret drug addiction of some kind. So these are all extremely complex traumas that are kind of built one layer on top of another, on top of another. In, let's say, a typical divorce, I write an article on my website about how we fall short as a community of being able to support these people who struggle with betrayal trauma. Oftentimes we can connect with the, oh, it's so sad that Mr. and Mrs. Smith are breaking up and divorcing. You can connect with that sadness and grief. But we cannot connect with the layers and layers of trauma from the months or years of deceit, the months or years of gaslighting, the shame that you feel yourself of, gosh, why couldn't I have saved this? Why couldn't I have fixed this? Why couldn't I have known that this was happening? And then the trauma of, I maybe might pride myself before I uncovered this addiction, before I uncovered this betrayal. I might have prided myself on being a pious woman or a very emotionally stable woman. And then obviously when I'm in crisis and I'm handling a divorce, or I'm handling my partner's addiction, or I'm dealing with family life while I'm extremely traumatized and sad and turned upside down, there's that other level of, well, maybe I am unstable. You know, I always prided myself on being a stable person, and now look at me. I can't, you know, stop crying. I can't give the kids as much attention and time. I'm worried about finances. So what I'm just trying to get across to you is that there's so many levels, so many layers here for people who are struggling with betrayal trauma. And my biggest goal is to help them have a language for it. So it's extremely important, if you're suffering from betrayal trauma, that you go see a professional that has experience in this subject matter specifically, because sometimes professionals, mental health therapists that don't have this in their background, that don't understand the multi-layer, the multi-trauma, the multi-shame levels that are involved with this, they might re-traumatize the betrayed partner by saying, well, you know, did you stop having sex with him after you had kids? Because, you know, or wow, she's really, really emotionally unstable. You know, maybe she has borderline personality disorder. And there can be a lot of judgment. When someone is suffering from betrayal trauma, the most important things are helping them develop a language for what happened, and then validating that indeed, yes, you were lied to, you were gaslighted, there was an expectation of safety, and you were victimized. And then help someone transcend from being a victim to being a victor. Help them rekindle their intuition. A lot of it gets suppressed during this trauma and crisis, and kind of help them rebuild their ability to see things, to call them out, to understand them better. And then setting up healthy boundaries and healthy communication to manage that. I'm also a proponent of EMDR, and I can answer questions that further as to the best of my ability to manage the physiological kind of PTSD symptoms that can get in the way of reconciling with your partner or moving on. I think that
before you go further, would you explain what EMDR is? Because not everybody's going to understand what that term means.
Right. So EMDR and SE, so psychosomatic experience, and eye movement, something, what is it? Desensitization, repetition, EMDR. Those are two kind of scientifically evidence-based ways of managing someone's physiological trauma symptoms. So let's say a soldier who got back from war, anytime they hear a plane fly overhead, they're back in the front lines of that war experience. You know, even though they might be walking in a grocery store, their body is telling them, that they are under attack. And it is very hard for them, for their prefrontal cortex to operate in a higher functioning, rational thought process. They're back in their lizard brain, just going, duck and save your life. That is exactly what's happening to partners in betrayal trauma. They might hear a song on the radio. They might go to a place, their kid's school. They might see a billboard, something. Their partner may say something with a similar tone that he or she said back when he was cheating. And it all physiological. You're right back there where you were being betrayed. You're right back to the fear and the kind of survival, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Thank you. So that's kind of before you can heal the marriage and explore your family history and your potential for childhood trauma, you need to be able to have a calmer, kind of back lizard brain is kind of what I call it. Your survival instincts need to kind of calm down and feel safe so you can process in your executive prefrontal cortex, executive functioning part of your brain.
You mentioned betrayal blindness, and I've not heard that term before, but I thought, wow, that really was an interesting way of terming it, because I have experienced, but also know of so many people that have, felt the shame of, why didn't I see that? Like, look, with hindsight, you see the indicators, but you didn't see them in the moment. Any further thoughts on?
There's actually, it's so common that there's a book on it. Jennifer Freyd. Have you ever heard of this one? Yeah, it's I brought it because I love it. Jennifer Freyd's Blind to Betrayal. Why we fool ourselves, we aren't being fooled. And the background of her, and it's she's done scientific studies on it, but her background was understanding why people who repress child sexual abuse memories, that was kind of the origination of her research. But then she started running into infidelity, where she found that all these people were coming to her and telling her, once I uncovered my husband's infidelity, all my friends and neighbors were coming up to me and telling me how they knew the whole time. And I'm like, I'm living with this guy, sleeping next to him. Why the hell didn't I know this was happening? And she kind of uses the same model to help you understand and kind of help you peel apart the layers of why your instincts and intuition were trumped by what she describes as like a dependency, not even like a toxic level of dependency, but you're married, you have kids, there's a financial dependency, maybe one's sick and one's not, one's working, one's not. So we're not saying like a pathological toxic level of codependency, but just when there is this mutual dependency, you are more inclined to kind of turn the other cheek, negotiate, compromise, minimize the red flags that are kind of screaming out at you. You were talking about, intimacy disorders, and I was thinking about time frames. It's like, and I know that there's no magic number of like, after X amount of days or months, you're going to be in a different place. But I believe that there's a pathway and there's a time frame, and like these things didn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. And so and I've heard this from the addicts too. It's like, I've been sober or in recovery for 10 seconds, so why doesn't she get over that? And I think that there's a time frame that is appropriate for the grieving and finding a path to healing. So do you have any thoughts on that? Like a number?
Well, like what is the process?
Right.
What is realistic?
I know, because the tough thing is
realistic,
right, is there's that complex PTSD, right? Which is if you're still in a traumatic, toxic environment, or continuing to get lied to or gaslighted, or the story keeps changing, then that kind of restarts the timer, right? We're never feeling safe. Right. We're never redeveloping trust, or what I like to call the benefit of the doubt. And so that's very difficult. But time frame, I mean, I think generally, like, experts in the field have said between 18 months to 3 years to kind of calm down the physiologial responses, kind of remind yourself, okay, I'm safe today. We're working on a relationship today. I've kind of strengthened and re-empowered and reinstated my instincts. So I'm not going to be blind or overlook the red flags. I'm going to feel safe enough to ask questions, and he or she should not be saying, when are you going to get over this? When are you going to, it's just, I have the right to say, you've been on your phone a lot, you've been texting a lot, who have you been talking to? Things like that. I have the right to check in, as long as I'm not doing it in a derogatory, accusatory way, just kind of like, I'm not feeling safe, I'd like you to help me feel safe kind of way. And then there's that really delicate balance, right? Where if your partner who's in recovery is keeping his or her side of the street clean. So you've gone through the disclosure, you've gone through the hard work, you've explored the family system, you've explored your marital struggles, you explored your childhood stuff and your shame, and there's a mutual dialogue going on. But suddenly you see a commercial of the hotel where you knew your partner was rendezvousing with one of the affair partners, and you get enraged. And this is years later. I know partners aren't going to like me saying this, but at some point it's like, you have to take responsibility for your physiological responses, for your personal physical struggles. Because if, what, you are welcome to always check in and say, is my partner keeping his or her side of the street clean? Am I okay? Well, then, it's not his fault that this commercial went on. I'm freaking pissed right now, and there's going to be an edge to everything I say and do, because I'm suddenly remembering what a monster he or she is capable of being, and how could he or she have done this to me. But you have to kind of keep your side of the street clean too, and say, well, what's yours and what's his.
I think the EMDR and SE, some of those things, they really do help you process through. Having done those,
Yeah.
I sound like a walking advertisement for therapy, don't I? No, I am.
I'm walking advertisement.
Yeah, but I did EMDR on a couple of things. I used to have, I called it the white hot rage. There'd be just things out of the blue. It felt like, totally tripping. And since I did the EMDR and addressed that, I have not had one incident, and that's been years. So
I have the same experience.
Yeah.
Where it would be very shaming to me personally when I was getting triggered with my stuff. And after the EMDR, it calmed it down, because I felt like it was bringing me back to square one again. Mm-hmm. And it had nothing to do with reality, right? It was all just old memories of old stuff that happened. And you get caught in this sadness of like, oh my God, I'm never going to get over this. I'm never going to transcend this. I'm going to always be this angry, betrayed person.
Well, and for mine, it was like, it would flare up, and I wasn't in tune with why it was happening, and it was old stuff. And as soon as I was able to unpack that and deal with it, all of that stopped. My reaction to it. That doesn't mean the hotel coming up or whatever doesn't happen, but like my reaction to, like, I have not experienced that again. So it was very healing. So
yeah, no, I personally and professionally a big proponent of EMDR. If done right, it can be life altering for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So the definition, disclosure, for those of you that don't know, is it's a kind of a sit down between the addict, the betrayed partner, and kind of going over the general facts, let's say the where, when, what, whys, to kind of help the betrayed partner establish trust again. In my opinion, to kind of help them heal from the gaslighting of, oh, when you came late to our son's birthday party, you were actually acting out. When that money was missing in the bank account, this is what it was being used for. So you can kind of start rebuilding your reality and say, oh, what my gut was telling me was right. And then also giving the addict the opportunity to kind of come clean and release his or her shame from leading the double life. When you think full disclosure is most beneficial, I'd have to say when the professionals in your life have said that it's time. when they feel like you guys are both in a healthy enough space to put you both in a room and talk about one of the most traumatizing experiences in your life. I mean, really, it's extremely painful, but definitely necessary to help rekindle your intuition, rebuild trust, kind of heal and understand the gaslighting that happened.
I agree. And there's actually research that a well done disclosure, not something that is unburdening the addict or because the partner is going, I deserve to know. Yes, you do deserve to know, but you deserve to know when the addict is in a place where they're not going to repeat the behavior or not likely to repeat the behavior, so that you have to do this all over again, that it isn't piecemeal, that your supportive therapist, and I think both people should be working with their supportive therapist so that the partner gets the questions answered that really are important without getting the details. It isn't important to know, Rob always uses, what her bra size was or whatever, those kind of details, you need to know, did something happen in our bed? That you do need, was it, like if there's a suspicion that it was with your sister or sister-in-law, that kind of stuff is really important to know if there's a close relationship. So, getting
the
the
number
right
one concern too for my clients is always exposure to disease. All my clients, kind of hang their head as they ever like, I guess I have to go get tested for everything.
So and those kind of disclosures should probably happen early without, like if there's medical things, that should be on the table early. But to have a disclosure where there isn't a plan, like who's, you're driving separate cars, this person's gonna, there's a plan for him to go stay at his friend's house or whatever, so that, or at a hotel, whatever, that there's a plan. And that it's set so that it's at the partners, the partner really is in charge of this. If the, partner needs to take a breath, they can ask the, the husband and the, and their therapist to step out in the hallway. I mean, like a well done disclosure, like the statistics are over 90% are glad they did it. It doesn't, it wasn't fun. But, like you said, it takes care of the gaslighting, like all those things that you told me, that I was just making up in my head. No, they really, I was right. Trust my gut. But also, it cleans the slate so that he's not carrying the shame of, and which is, more likely to be a reason, not a cause of, of relapse too. So,
it is very traumatizing to divorce after betrayal, right? Because the divorce is about negotiating and compromising, right? We're going to have to talk about custody of our children. We're going to have to talk about co-parenting. We're going to have to talk about finances. And that does take a level of trust that when you're negotiating and compromising, that this person's not capable, this was the person that was capable of lying to your face over and over and over again. So why on earth would I want to sit down and compromise on finances and let him have my children? I'll always feel for the safety of a situation, but in rare cases, there have been clients who've said, we have every intention of divorcing because the trauma that we've experienced and the violation we've experienced is too deep for us. But there's a deep sadness for what has happened and a desire to kind of reconcile, come clean in a safe, structured way. Specifically, it's been like the husband said, I'm so good at lying and manipulating and, lying by omission that I almost need someone to ask me, someone with your experience to ask me direct questions, because she's just not asked me the right questions, basically, that have very conveniently let him sneak through and be very, very nefarious in his behavior. So those were some, I proceeded with a lot of caution, but while it was deeply painful, I think that it did help them later on be better co-parents, because there was kind of an understanding of where both were coming from. He was kind of forced to see her pain and see what his choices did to her. And she got to kind of see him finally speak the truth for the first time after years of just being so deceitful. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of rekindling your intuition and re-empowering that, kind of turning it on when you realize when you've been in a partnership with an addict, it is annihilated. I've had that confirmed from parents whose kids are addicts, or partnerships, or children of parents who are addicts. Your instincts and intuition and your ability to read people, set boundaries, is just destroyed from those kind of dynamics. And yeah, I think there's a lot of healing to just kind of name what the reality was.
Well,
So was this what was happening? Yes. Okay, thank you.
well, and when there's that much hurt and anger, it leaks out into other relationships. So, it would be hard for me to be, a great mom if I'm, if I'm so angry at this person and so hurt and betrayed. And, the kids pick up on all that stuff. And so, but like, I don't want to, fill their little brains or older brains with, well, your dad did this, I mean, sure, I'm angry, but, ultimately, I want what's best for my kids. So yeah, having the disclosure and working through it and learning to co-parent, does make for hopefully a much better outcome for everybody. So.
Anyone who's been working in this field for a longer period of time will find that, first of all, no one even believed that there is such thing as addiction, many, many years ago. And then the person who was married to the addict was a co-addict. And there was a disease model of kind of almost shaming them for not being able to, it's your fault that you married an addict, basically. And ever since then, and you can correct me if you're wrong, if you feel like you have a different opinion, Tammy, but I feel like we've been moving away from that disease model, definitely, where codependency is kind of thought of in this stigma way, like stop being codependent, and kind of this appreciation that there are absolutely pieces to a relationship where there's going to be dependency. But when, SHIT hits the fan and crisis happens, you kind of want to do an autopsy of where it all went wrong. And understanding your childhood and how you learned how to love and where you learned how to love. And did you have unspoken resentment? Why did you? What's your language for talking about things? How do you feel about, do you ever get triggered by abandonment or fear of connection with other people? I feel like all these models, from the PMLD, love addict, love avoidant, to Rob's discussions, to Jennifer Schneider writes a lot about betrayal, that I combine them all. I mean, nothing should ever feel shaming. To answer your question, if a mental health professional is helping you manage your betrayal trauma and you walk out of those sessions feeling like shame, like I'm bad, I did wrong, this is my fault, that is not okay. Okay. It should be like, this is an autopsy of how things went down. This is where he might have struggled. This is where I've struggled. It's very difficult when you're in so much pain and you have been victimized by lying and betrayal. But every relationship has two pieces to it. And down the line, when you get out of the crisis moment, it's definitely beneficial to kind of understand, and you don't repeat any patterns that you've identified to be toxic or unhealthy or bad. It has to be your own journey, whatever makes you feel safe again. Safety is the foundation of rebuilding intimacy, and you got to try to do what you got to do.
There's a website, appsats.org, that is trained partner specialists. So if you go to that website, they do a great job of training professionals to be supportive of betrayed partners. And I mentioned RCA, which is Recovering Couples Anonymous. And my experience with them is, because you're both there and you're really focusing on the coupleship, something like that can be very healing. That said, the other thing I think of, I mentioned AppSats, there are other trained professionals, but if they're offering a group therapy experience where, you know, where people similar to you can, and there are a number of therapists that offer a partners group, you know, in therapy, so that's facilitated by a therapist. So you've got this guided experience that can be really healing as well.
Right.
So it kind of takes the toxicity out of it because, you know, there's someone who's a mental health professional there to guide the process. But, you know, I'm in recovery. I've done a lot of personal work. I was the Al-Anon as well as the AA. And so, you know, I found individual therapy really useful. Group therapy was probably pivotal. I mean, that was the thing, because there was the support of these other people and stuff that I had a hard time getting in touch with. You know, it helped me break through those barriers. Painful at moments, but freeing, you know. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world of not going through those painful moments to get to, you know, what I was able to experience. So perhaps, you know, if you've explored the variety of 12-step meetings, you know, even go to some open, you know, AA meetings or whatever, and just listen to speaker meetings. You know, something may resonate with you, and just being in community, like Kristin was mentioning, you know, the attachments and, you know, and you know, seeing, you know, some of what other people have gone through and gotten to the other side, you know, could be, you know, an opportunity for some healing for you.
We'll be talking about an array of kind of healthy communication, healthy boundaries, healthy, just kind of things that we don't get taught in school that we benefit from, and how to relate to people.
Yes. And so, and we'll always work to address the questions that are asked. So hope you'll join us. So thank you, Kristin. Thank you all.